Today we have Emily McQueen with us on the Culture Coach podcast. Emily, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I am really excited to be here. It's absolutely a topic that I love to talk about, especially with you.
Yes. So today we're talking about organizational transformation. And so I have one of the experts on all things talent strategy, employee engagement, culture, really one of
Too
the people
kind.
that I learned from. I'm so glad you're here to talk transformation. So, Emily, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
I have 25 years of global experience translating business strategies into comprehensive people strategies that rally employees behind organizational direction. And what I love about our field of expertise is the ability to align and connect talent management, engagement, culture practices and programs like you talked about in the whole employee life cycle for not only meaningful employee experiences, but really staying in lockstep with the business, enabling organizational performance. Because yes, it's about meaningful employee experiences, but when you get to the nitty gritty of it, it really is about setting the company up for success to reach their performance objectives.
I love that. And so many organizations I don't believe know that there are things that you can put in place in order for that to happen. I mean, yes, it's happening naturally, but there are things that you can put in place to allow that organic culture to grow. And so when we think about, I mean, organizational transformation is just it's happening all the time. And so tell me, what are some reasons why a company would attempt to make an intentional shift in their culture?
I love how you say intentional because it is very intentional. And this is a shift that has happened in the last 10 years of OD, field of expertise. So speaking to the purpose of culture. And like I said, yes, it is to engage, it's to retain, it's to attract, it's to be a great place to work, but it has to be directly designed to enable your specific company performance. So for instance, Google, and Google culture cannot be taken and put into another organization. Google is able to have that culture because it supports exactly their business strategy, their mission, their vision, their strategy. So it has to be tailored. And that's what I love about what we do is that it's tailored each time differently, but depending on what your organization mission, vision, strategy is about. And so to answer your question, when HR or business leaders are seeing lack of clarity and direction, or employees not rallying around the direction, or there's low engagement scores, or there's poor company performance, you're not attracting what I like to call the fit for purpose talent. So
Mm.
the talent that you need to achieve your business imperatives. So for instance, you may be recruiting fantastic sales executives, but you're not recruiting your system engineers or your product scientists. So it's looking at why, who's your audience, and what are they seeking that you are needing, particularly with the talent that you're looking for. So all of these are indicators that one or more of your cultural touch points aren't aligned or aren't enabling business or employee performance.
And so how does a CEO know if their culture is in need of a change?
I think the probably getting down to the number one thing is that employees aren't aligned with the business direction. It's kind of like the boiling pot, it's a slow boil. So it's a slow shift, or it can be a really quick transformation. Both of those need real focus on shifting the culture. And so I'll give you an example. I was with an organization and it was 3 years post merger. And so when they were bringing two companies, very large companies together, the whole business strategy was about one company. So the best brands, the best talent, the best strategies, the best practices and programs. And so we went through this whole integration, and for 2 years, very, very successful in building one organization and bringing everything together with one strategy. But as you know, it of course is evolving, and they were needing to evolve to a much more customer focused strategy. and business plan. And so as they moved their business strategy forward, what was happening is they couldn't understand why employees weren't moving forward. They were still talking about the same old things. They felt stuck in the past and not moving forward with the
Mm.
strategy. And so what I was able to show is that the reason why is you move the strategy forward and evolve that, but the culture stayed still aligned with the immediately post merger strategy. And so what we had to do was unpack all of those pieces and move them to align to the new evolving strategy. So a quick example, one small thing was in the culture, there is great recognition program. So it wasn't about changing the program per se, but it was what you recognize. So there was always recognition of teamwork and so forth. And what the executives were saying is teamwork is great, but we need people focused on the customer. And so we needed to change what was being recognized because, as you know, what's recognized gets done. And
Yes.
so shifting certain things like that is what then helps employees, you know, understand and change their mindset of, okay, this is what I'm going to be valued for now. Not that, again, teamwork isn't valued across the board, but now my focus is also generating that customer centric mindset and behaviors.
Yes. And so one of the things you said when you were talking about like being able to take Google's culture and put it in another organization and why that doesn't work is because maybe their core values, their mission, their vision is different than an organization's. And so you build that culture around those values and that mission and vision. And so probably like just to break it down and unpack it a little bit, I'm guessing that when they shifted to the customer focus, that's a shift of vision, right?
Absolutely. It
Yeah,
was a shift of their mission still stayed the same, but their
right.
vision, their strategy shifted. We even ended up changing one of the core values,
Okay.
and even down to just the engagement events that they had instead of supporting, like for instance, if there was a community event, and so it was getting a tent together, and we really, the whole thing was about the bringing people together. We realized, okay, that's a lot of money, and while that's a great, activity, it's not supporting customer focus. So instead, it's not like we eliminated the event, but we shifted the focus of the event. So the event was then bringing in things that represented our customers and
Mm,
brought people into understanding who our customers were. And then that, so it's still getting together, but the focus and the purpose of it was different.
okay. I love that. And I also, when you talked about the mergers, I've been through a couple of those myself. And just again, to kind of unpack and break that down and talk the tactical pieces, if we have leaders that are going through this today, I know the exercise that we went through, and I'm curious if yours was the same, where we looked across the employee life cycle and identified what are the processes, what are the people processes that impact um, I mean, everything from policies and procedures
Exactly.
to your point, the cultural touch points, the onboarding. What are all of those employee lifecycle processes? How do they look different in each organization that we're bringing together? What do we want to keep? What stays the same? And then how do we get them all on the same page?
Yeah. And also what, it may be that, like you said, what do you want to keep or change, or
Yeah.
it may be something that you end up adding because bringing these two organizations together, there's something that they hadn't had before.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so it's that, especially when you bring two companies together, it may be hard. Usually you have a bench organization, and you may merge into that one, the culture and so forth. So that's a different type of transformation or integration
Hmm.
transition that you have, employees go through. But when you're bringing two together and creating a new one, that's
Mm,
engaging
right.
because both of them are feeling like they're starting something new. Um, and you're able to create something that completely aligns with the new direction of the organization. Yeah.
That makes sense. My experience was more around the acquisition and less
Mm.
kind of the
Mm.
merger. That
Yeah.
makes sense. I like that differentiator. Okay, well let's talk about company transformation since it's really becoming more prevalent and the cultures are being left behind. You know, as we
Mhm.
were just talking about, if you're not intentional about it. So, what changes have you seen in the way that companies experience organizational transformation really over the last 2 decades?
I think the speed in which business is going in terms of, and the AI, the data explosion, the convenience of things, the ability to get information quickly. So all of those things continue to speed up the transformation, well, the speed in which businesses need to keep up with the marketplace, need to keep up with, are their products still relevant? Do they need to shift their strategy? What is their competition doing? So there's a study by McKinsey recently that said that 1/3 of organizations are going through transformation at any point in time. So
Mm.
1/3 of organizations. So, sometimes we feel like, gosh, I want to be with an organization that's not changing. It's like, well, if they're not right
Yeah.
now, they probably will be. Global CEOs were asked, how many have you been through? And they were saying at least 2 to 3 in the last 5 years.
Mm.
So even CEOs are feeling that change. We call it that change exhaustion, but it's becoming a way of life that we just have to learn to be able to not get so exhausted by it, but be able to be resilient through it. But
Yes.
the other thing that's changed is how fast organizations are
Mm.
doing it. So instead of, we have a full year to get ready for this change, it's no longer those days. I remember when it was 6 months to get ready for either a transformation or even a restructure. Now you've got 4 weeks. And so even with big extensive changes, we've got 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and we're on the run. So not only how frequent it's going on, but also how fast it's having
Mm-hmm.
to be done. And I always like to look at that Denison model, where it talks about from, you have to be looking externally at the marketplace. So are we listening to the marketplace? And that is changing so much that then you have to constantly be looking at internally. Whereas our mission, our vision, our strategy, is that aligning still with the marketplace and what our customers and clients are needed, which then means you have to then shift your culture, your talent management programs, like you said, your policies, your practices, all of that to make sure it stays aligned and engage and take your employees through that process. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is now a very quick process that organizations are having to do. And I think a lot of times employees get so angry at the organization, like, here comes another change, without realizing there's always a reason and a purpose, but it's not because we just want to, it's because something is driving that, and there has to be a shift in order for the business to be successful.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember 10 years ago now, probably our colleague Deanna and I were sent out to go get certified in change management because we were experiencing in the tech company that we were at, like just continued change. And
Right.
we knew that it was becoming more and more of just a way of life. And so the speed at
Mhm.
which we're asked to change is just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then what do leaders need to do differently, do you think, to lead through change in these new times?
I think one is helping employees understand how the change process is different today, and not, necessarily speaking in our, words that we have in HR, but
Right.
if you look at organizational psychology, they study how individuals change and then how organizations as well. And it used to be very similar. But what is happening is, because of the speed, organizations are having to do it differently. And so if you think about how someone creates a particular behavior and an action, they form a belief, which is based on an assumption or, something they see or, whatever. And they create that belief, and then that helps their mindset, that changes or establishes a mindset, and that
Mm.
creates an attitude. And then from that comes behavior. And if you think about it throughout your life, be it your own beliefs, how you form them through your family, or how you were raised, or different things in your life, that's a sustainable, that really makes a sustainable action or behavior.
Hmm.
But it also takes a long time to do. It's a very slow process. How businesses used to do it in the past is that same way. So they used to, share why it's being done. What is the purpose of this? Helping people understand and get their belief in why there needs to be a change, and then helping the mindset of this is what it's going to look like. And now I get it. Okay, my attitude is good, that this is a reason why. And even, being able to pull employees in and let's have focus groups and talk about what the change is going to be. And then they're on board and the action takes place. And that's when we used to have a year to
Right.
transformation and structural changes and so forth. Organizations, like I said, it just can't go at that pace anymore. And so what's happening is organizations are coming in and, instead of going belief, mindset, action, they're just coming in and saying action. And they have to. Here's the action we need to take. Here's the transformation we need to have. What's happening is that they may get an action, but it's not changing the mindset and the belief that has to come at some point, or else it's not going to be sustainable. You're not going to have people engaged and so forth. And so even though that might be happening fast, it's not going to remain. And it's not, you're not going to have strong performance, because you have to at
Hmm.
some point have the other. And so how organizations need to do it now, and it's difficult, but this is where managers come involved, leaders, change, people who are influencers come into the process that make it so critical, their role so critical, is that the company has to take action and they have to say, this is what we're doing. But then also you have to at the same time be saying why. And this is what it's going to help. And this is, the business case, the purpose, and so forth. And so that is a constant, balance that's hard to achieve, and it's uncomfortable for employees because they're having to behave before totally understanding and being on
Hmm.
board with why. It's with an organization where this one global market leader came in and was saying to to an end market, I need you to drive these products, not these others. And the sales teams were saying, you're not understanding. This is what our customers want. We've been doing this forever. You didn't even ask our opinion. And, finally, after talking about why, and here's the data and stuff, he finally just said, I need you to do it. This is what we're going to do. And I think you'll see why afterwards. And that was hard. And people were, got their backs up and what? But they started doing it, and then they started to see why. And sometimes organizations just have to do that. And that is tough
Hmm.
because employees aren't completely bought in. But I have seen when, and they did it, and they did see the change, by the way. Not always does it happen that way, but
Yeah.
this time they did. And so I was over a region, and both regions had to be changing due to a global business strategy that was changing. And one organization, they, said, we've got to take action. We have to do it fast, trying to, also have the mindset and the belief changed of why we're having to do it. But they acted fast. They didn't wait for everyone to get on board and bought in. And what happened is they did have some turnover, but also they were able to perform quickly, make the adjustment, and the performance was skyrocketing. And with that, the engagement also skyrocketed. So they had high performance, high engagement, and the turnover ended up slowing because they were so successful. And then they were able to, within 2 years, be from not, even on the charts as a great place to work, to number 2 in the country. Another organization at the same time going through the same changes, they were so afraid, the leadership was so afraid of turnover that they didn't make the changes, or they backed off when they started getting, employees upset, and they waited to try to get people on board, to try to get them believed, to be in those conversations and so forth. And what happened is the change was so slow that performance plummeted,
Mm,
engagement plummeted. Now, they didn't have high turnover. That they achieved that. They didn't have high turnover, but they had low performance and low engagement. And that's the
mhm.
worst scenario that you can have. So it's hard for, leadership to just say, we're going to do this. We believe in the strategy and we will get people as we go. But they have to be done at the same time due to, how fast our marketplace and our world is going now.
That's so interesting. And it reminds me of when when we made a shift from kind of waterfall development to a more agile development. And then we started applying that practice to other things. And so when it came to change, we learned that really having small incremental changes allowed you to fail fast and fail off and fail fast,
Right.
and to move through that change, then it doesn't require as much getting people on board. You're able to push a little bit
It's true.
faster, but you're making maybe incremental change, not big sweeping change. So a little bit
Yeah.
different, but
Yeah.
um,
But a good strategy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
If you have the time and able to do that. Yeah. A
right,
great
yeah,
strategy. Yeah.
yeah,
Because you're having those, like you said, those quick fails, but also those quick wins. Yeah.
yes,
And,
exactly.
and I think the difference is, you know, people want change to happen with them. They want to be a part
Mm-hmm.
of it. And so what they're losing um, when they're going to fast action, what they're losing is the ability to do it with me. And what they
Right.
feel is it's done to me. But when you can do it on both sides at the same time, then people understand actually it's being done for you. This is what we need for business performance. This is what we need to be successful. And so I'm not doing it to you. We're doing this for us so we can be successful. So it's just trying to change that mindset a bit. Yeah.
And what do you do in situations where there are employees that are on the front line that may know, they may see some of the obstacles accurately before a leader that's maybe 5 levels removed? How do you take into consideration that feedback loop when
Mm-hmm.
you're doing that?
Yeah. That's a very good point. You need to have those feedback channels. And, you know, having whatever you want to call them in your organization, coffee chats, ask me anything. Leadership visibility is one of the
Mm,
most critical things during this type of transformation. And so being able to have, ask me anything and questions and what are you seeing? Also visibility in terms of teams, if it's virtual teams, even if it's, going into one of, a staff meeting with the sales team or with a pro serve team, and saying, what are you seeing? What are the pitfalls? What are some of the solutions that we can do? And helping them, and that's the part of the manager as well, is to help them know what do they have control over, what don't they have
hmm.
control over.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
one of the big things is to help them understand you have control over being able to give feedback. You don't have control over, the decision for this direction, but what you do have control over is try it, feedback, come with solutions, all of those things. Try, look for the positives. What is this going to give us? All of those types of things that can help, to achieve the same goal.
Yeah. In my experience too, like having the leader, the highest level leader, share what the change is, but then the manager one to one sharing, here's here's what it means to you specifically. So you're
Right.
right, having that bit, like having the coffee chats and having leadership visible, but then the manager also being equipped.
Yes.
um and I think we're going to do another episode on what the manager can do during change, so
Right.
that'll be great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, it's those pre-wires of pre-wiring your leaders, pre-wiring your managers, so they've got some of the answers and the scripts and
Hmm.
the business case, and all of those things that they can have to um, speak to the change.
Yes. So, what frameworks, like when you're looking at change, what frameworks have you used to assess a culture and really help leaders to understand where a change is needed?
Yeah. So again, anytime you go through a transformation, even if it's part of the organization that's shifting their strategy, it's important to look at, all of those touch points, from the talent practices, like you said, to the policies, to even the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
I was in one organization where we were saying 401k and, the match and this and those types of benefits, wonderful. But our target audience, and you have to think of it that way, just like your
Yeah.
customers, our target audience were graduates who were software engineers and, straight out of school. And they were saying, I don't really care about my 401k yet.
Mm-hmm.
What I care about is, these types of things. And so it's, any type of change in the strategy, change in your who you need in order to achieve your goal at fit for purpose talent. You have to look at then, that inside out. Am I set up to attract the right people for this change in strategy? So for instance, we went from, in one organization, from relationship selling in sales to having it be more expertise and helping them understand their own business and where this technology could help. And so that was a huge shift in, the skill set, how some, not only just the sales approach, but also their knowledge. And so we then had to shift to, then who do we need to attract and bring in, which then was, well, now what do they look for in an organization? So you can do it from, your strategy shifting. So a great model is, again, Denison, of just looking at it to say, we're listening to the marketplace, then do we know where we're going that's going to help us get there? Are our goals aligned, so forth? To then, do we leverage our values, our systems, our practices to enable that? And then how are we bringing our employees along? So you can do that from the marketplace to the strategy to, the internal programs and practices. But you can also do that the backing into it. So there's a great book called Fusion. Love this book because it talks about that inside out brand. And so, are you who you say you are? So a great example is John Deere. Way long time ago, won't date myself, but way long time ago, John Deere, as their products of farm products, machinery, they get what it's like to be out in the fields with the farmers. However, what was happening is, when they were going in, farmers and people who were needing, their equipment and their knowledge and expertise were going in, and they were seeing people in suits in the showrooms. And so they were like, wait a minute, this is not who you said you were. And so you can also do kind of back into it from the outside in. We are saying we are this.
Mm-hmm.
Are we showing up as that? So another great example is that in this organization that I was in, we had a PE firm purchased by the organization. And so they were shifting the strategy, and it was from, we are relationship. It was in a technology company, and it was from, we are heavy on our relationship and our, customer focus in terms of building that bond, to, we are the experts and we will show up as experts. Well, one of the things is that we had a value that was friends and family. And so, yes, friends and family, that it was great in the culture and it was so bonding. And people would say, I joined because of the friends and family. The problem with that was that our customers did not want us showing up as friends and family. Your core values tell your employees who you show up as, for your customers, for each other, for the community. And so, with a friends and family value, our employees were still in the mindset of, this is our approach with our customers. And the customers were getting quite upset because they're like, I don't want you to buy me a pizza. I want you to be the expert. I want you to come in knowing what you know. And so we had to take a step back and say, if we're saying this, that this is who we are with our customers, then how do we set our employees up for success? And that is understanding how we need to show up with our customers and our values. How do we, how am I going to be recognized and reward? All of those, again, those touch points that then help me be who we say we're going to be.
Yes. So important and really drives, I mean, not just with the customers, but with future employees, right? That employer brand. How are you attracting that? Are you who you say you are when the
Right.
employees get inside the organization?
Exactly the same thing. Exactly. And that's why your talent brand has to be aligned with
Yes,
or your external brand, because in order to be authentic, you have to be who you say you are. And so if
that's
you say
right.
you are business strategists, then you better be business strategists
Right.
internally. And I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but so many times I see in organizations that you say you're this, but you're not. A great example with a policy is, so the customers for this one product were very city, focus, and so very much into the trends of things, the
Mm,
nightlife, the this, and so one of the best salespeople that we had, we brought in from the field to work on the market strategy because he was great in the sales in the fields. Well, when he came in, his hair was longer. He had an earring. He had tattoos on his arm. But the corporate policy was that you couldn't show tattoos, you couldn't have, jewelry. Your hair had to. Now, this is, of course, dated a while back. But it's a great example of, and they
yes.
made him cut his hair. And it was like you took away everything that made him so powerful
Yes.
as an employee because he understood the customer. And so that's what I mean by that. Even the policies need to align with who's your target customer? Who do you say you are? How do you want to show up? Now, how do you create that environment for employees and attract, retain, engage employees based on that? Because that sets them up for success in achieving the business strategy.
So important. And, some of the stats we've been hearing for a long time that 50 to 70% of all change initiatives fail. It used to be 70% for the longest time. I think they've said, well, it's not always 70%,
Mhm.
but the point is, right, that there's a lot of failure in organizational change, and 2/3 of workers experience burnout, which further causes transformation failure, right? As your employees get that, not only just the change fatigue, but burnout. And so I think really being intentional, back to our word of
Mhm.
intention, and how we go through organizational change without leaving the culture behind. This has been just a beautiful conversation, Emily. I am so
Yeah,
excited for our next one. You're just such an expert in this field, and it's so
and
fun to
so are you.
it's
You're
fun to
always,
geek out with you.
it is fun to geek out with you. We'll keep doing it.
All right, Emily, thank you so much.
Thank you.